Hello and welcome back to the Survival Horror Guide, a series where we play and then review survival horror games. We rate them on their fear factor, and then we give them an overall score. Finally, we send it over to the series' totally arbitrary rating system to see how it stacks up against the rest of the survival horror competition. Today for the show, we are checking out the 2005 Ubisoft-published horror game, Cold Fear. It was developed by the French studio Darkworks, who was the same studio that made Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare. So the team had some experience in making horror games, and much like how Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare clearly was inspired by Resident Evil 2 and 3, one could argue that given the over-the-shoulder camera angle, Cold Fear definitely took some influence from Resident Evil 4. Despite technically releasing just a couple months after, perhaps the team was inspired by some of Resident Evil 4's pre-release material. Either way, the game does jump around a lot between perspectives. You got areas with fixed camera angles, a traditional third-person camera, and the over-the-shoulder style camera when shooting. I suppose you could say it's got the best of both worlds, but that's pretty much where the similarities to Resident Evil end. Minus the zombies, I suppose. But Cold Fear is definitely its own thing. Excuse me? What? The game takes place in the middle of the ocean. You play as Tom Hansen, part of the US Coast Guard, and a real man's man, albeit a bit one note.
At least I found the code.
No remorse. Well, Willie, we got the code out of it. It could be worse. Fuck it. The game starts off with Hansen and his team responding to a call that leads them to a Russian whaler ship. Of course, it's in the middle of a storm, and it doesn't take long for things to go completely sideways. The rest of Hansen's team ends up getting entirely killed off. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Hansen explores the ship while fighting off freaked out Russian soldiers and the reanimated corpses of other Russian soldiers. Once Hansen reaches the ship's radio, he comes into contact with the CIA agent named Bennett, and he gets roped into their mission, and old Tom Hansen is the last hope to complete their objective. Though Bennett is still kind of a dick about it for some reason.
I might be able to spot your girlfriend.
She's not my girlfriend.
Oh, that's right, Hansen. You get your girlfriend shot, not eaten by monsters.
Yeah, fuck you, Bennett. So of course, the game takes place on board a ship, classic horror scenario, and then later on an oil rig that's secretly a research center. But of course, you'll learn that the Russians discovered parasitic creatures called exocells deep underground, underwater. They'd infect and take control of corpses, the hosts, basically turning them into zombies. Not good. And so, with ties to organized crime, the Russians seeked to study them and to weaponize them. And of course, things didn't quite go according to plan. Now, I say you'll learn and discover these story beats throughout the game, but in truth, most of this game's story is told behind text diaries and journals you'll find throughout the journey. Now, I have no problem with finding and reading notes and all that in the game. Like, I don't think I could name a survival horror game that doesn't have these things. But Cold Fear, its main narrative, is literally all in these journals. You will honestly have no clue whatsoever about what's going on if you don't read these. Along the way, you'll meet a girl named Anna, whose father was one of the scientists studying the exocells. He infected himself and is the game's final boss. But like, the entire ending sequence, all of the context about what's going on here, you'd have no idea at all if you don't make a point to read everything. Again, I don't mind having to read a little bit to fill in some backstory, some lore, but this game has its core story told through journal entries. Show don't tell always makes for better storytelling, something that Cold Fear does not do. But it's clear to me that the story isn't the main focus of this game. Most of your time is spent exploring the environments and fighting off exocell-infected corpses, and both of these things are fun to do. They're well executed. The ship is a great setting because it's easy to wrap your brain around. You're basically never lost. The passageways are dark and narrow, so it's easy and effective in building a creepy atmosphere. It also helps that it looks really good for a 15-year-old game. It actually aged quite well. Sorry, Captain. Gotta do it. Ah! You fucker. Now, I played this on PC, but I do have the Xbox version as well, and it looks pretty good, all things considered. The water effects, the lighting, even the real-time blood splatter were definitely impressive for a game from this era. It's actually kind of funny on the box. The game says that it displays in 720p, which only a handful of Xbox games do, except it doesn't. There are actually a lot of people who complained about it online 15 years ago. and the combat isn't terrible. It's a little stiff and damn hard to aim using a controller. I had to switch to keyboard and mouse controls where popping headshots became ridiculously easy, but it's definitely serviceable. I've played much, much worse. Though things get a little bit jank when the enemies get right up close to you, I feel like the aiming reticle isn't calibrated to fire at enemies right in front of you, if that makes any sense. So you end up missing at point blank range all the time. There is a melee attack, which is great when it works, but they made the odd decision to have the button to melee attack and to pick up items be the same button. You guys, I shit you not, the melee attack is the same button to pick items up. So I'm there trying to pick shit up, and I'm getting fucking attacked. I'm getting cleaved. There were a couple of times where I'm trying to get the enemy off me, melee attack him away, create some distance, but instead I'm trying to pick up an item off the ground instead. I really don't know why they did this. No! Melee! No! Oh my god. The game is also super short. My first completely blind playthrough was like 4 hours, and yet, by the time the credits rolled, I was still ready for it to be over. I think that's because the game is just lacking an engaging story, lacking an interesting main character. It was lacking in a variety of environments and variety of enemies. I suppose the lack of environmental variation can't really be helped considering the game's setting, but I feel like they could have introduced some more interesting situations or scenarios. It all boils down to go to this area and shoot and kill everything. Let's at least loot them. Ah! On the fear factor scale, this game is a 6. The scares are pretty straightforward and very front-loaded in the first half of the game. After spending enough time in the same looking areas, fighting the same enemies, the game kind of stops being scary. Overall, this game is a 6.5. It's fundamentally very solid, very functional, but it's missing that secret sauce. Ultimately, the lack of a compelling story or characters makes it somewhat forgettable. Now taking it over to the series' totally arbitrary rating system, the rest of the competition is going to be sitting tight right where they are. Cold Fear is going to cap off the bottom of the list, at least for now. If you guys want to check out my full playthrough of Cold Fear, then you should definitely check out the Let's Play channel for all of my horror game playthroughs and all kinds of other random stuff. We're playing through a bunch of Marvel superhero games right now, just for fun, because that's what it's all about.
You're out of your mind, woman!
You have a better idea?
Shit.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Survival Horror Guide. As always, please let me know what you thought about it, and hit the like button if you did enjoy it. Helps me out a lot. And we'll be back with more reviews of survival horror games very, very soon. Thanks so much for watching this one. Peace.